Hey, Jasen Rice here with another LotParty quick tip. Wanted to go over, just had an article published about FCA. Chrysler, we are a vendor partner with them now. We did a 90-day trial. It actually ended in June. So I think June or July was kind of the first month of launching this. It was the first trial they've ever put any vendor through because of the fact that, we're just not a website provider or a CRM. We're more of a consultant boutique type place. But that article just got released on auto remarketing, which is right there. Auto remarketing, I published it yesterday, and or I pushed it out yesterday. It was published yesterday. Check it out. But it basically, in that interview, I referenced football teams and football seasons. And I talked to dealers a lot about this. One of the things I talk about is, right now during camp and stuff like that, there's talk about winning the division, trying to get to the Super Bowl, trying to, get to the end game, win that division, get to the Super Bowl. And even though they have that's their goals, right? And so they're going through camp, going through preseason games, and figuring out who's going to be on their team to get them there. Now, I talked to dealerships about this because every dealership has their goals. It might not be obviously the Super Bowl. They might want to get to 200 cars or 100 cars or whatever that number is at a certain amount of gross per copy. And that's the ultimate goal. And that's good. You want to work toward that goal, and you got to figure out, again, who's on your team to help you get there, and what are you going to do to get there. Some will say, well, I'm going to get better in turnaround time, or I'm going to get better in pricing, or I'm going to get better in descriptions. Okay, those are good goals. No different than a football team saying, hey, we want to get to the playoffs this year and try to get to the Super Bowls, but we need to get better in our run game, and we need to get better on some passing defense. So they figure out who and what they're going to be doing in the camp in the preseason to then launch the football season with. But once you get into the season, once they figure that out, like you said, you should have that already figured out and you have your team in place. Each week as the season starts, the talk about football game, talk about the playoffs and the Super Bowl are out the door. No longer talking about that. What we're talking about is who we're playing this week. If you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you might be playing the Raiders. So you're going to make adjustments based on the Raiders' strengths and weaknesses. You win that game, then you go into week 2, and maybe it's the Chargers, and you're making new adjustments. Sometimes it's the same adjustments from last week. But more times than not, you got to make different adjustments. So when it comes to used car operations, it's the same thing. You want to get to 200 or 100 units at $1,500 a copy, but now that you got your team in place, now that you know your goals, what adjustments each week do you got to make to win that week, to ultimately win that month, to ultimately win that quarter, to win that year? Okay, so this week it might be your average investment's too high, so you need to start driving that down when you look at your purchases and everything. This week you might be too heavy in trucks, so you need to get those moving, but you need some intermediate cars, so that's what you need to start buying. You might be bleeding through your 31 to 45 day bucket, meaning you have more cars sitting there than what you're selling. You might have to make some adjustments on those cars. You might have to get caught up in your photos and descriptions. Maybe those are behind or maybe not as well. Once you do that this week and you make those adjustments, next week it could be a whole other batch. So again, ultimately your goal was get to 100 cars a month at so-and-so a copy, and you think you're going to do that by buying better or pricing better or what have you. But each week, again, this week, maybe my pricing's fine, but it's my inventory make mix that's throwing it off. Maybe it's the shopper counts in the market. Maybe there's less people in the market shopping for cars because it's a slower season, so I got to get more competitive on my pricing because things are slowing down. So you've got to realize that there's adjustments you got to make each week. You just can't have that goal on that board, on that sold board, and have a goal up there and then just try to hit it and try to close more deals, because that's what happens, when dealerships get to the last week or last few days of the month. Just the last couple of days of the month, we're off our goals, and then you start scrambling. And the reason why dealers end up scrambling on the last couple of days of the month, everybody should say, hey, you should treat the first day and the 5th day of the month just like the last day of the month. Those dealers that just go on a whim and try to hit a certain goal without making adjustments each week end up scrambling. The dealers that actually have goals and then know what adjustments they're making each week, their second week of the month is no different than their fourth week of the month. And yeah, it's the last day of the month, but they've been making adjustments each week, every day to get to their goals. And they might have missed it a few here and there, and they're going to scramble a bit, but they're not as desperate as some of the other stores. And we run into this all the time. So I bring it up to you is, again, you can't just look at an overall blanket goal, treat it like a football team. You got to go into each week making adjustments, making adjustments, making adjustments. Sometimes it's the same adjustment week after week after week. And if you track that and figure that out, then you know you got a problem that's got to be resolved. It's not an easy one to resolve because you've been struggling it for 3 or 4 weeks or maybe a month or 2. Okay, so think of that as we go into this football season. It is a cool time. I see some guys, Anderson, Tim, nice to see you on here. Brian. Hit me up with some comments. I actually post these on YouTube. If you happen to watch this on YouTube, you can click right up here for our subscribe button. I'm going to put another video down here that you can click on to watch our next video. But I hope this was helpful. Get me a call or email, jrice@lotpop.com, or go to lotpop.com for a free inventory evaluation.